folks, welcome into That Betting Show for April 8th, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. He's Teddy Sabransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at Right Side V. Teddy, one last dance tonight in NCAA action. But before we get into that, hot topic of the day today, Teddy, Final Four controversy. Double dribbles, possibly missed out there, Teddy. Late foul calls, not going the way for Auburn, but I do agree it was an absolute foul call, Teddy. But look, I bet -6 Virginia. The call didn't impact me, but boy, did it impact Auburn and head into the final.
It sure did. Again, I had Virginia -5 in my pocket. Didn't do me any good. And you're actually hoping for OT, given that scenario. Guile, hit 2 out of 3. Kyle, hit 2 out of 3, please, but don't hit that third. Hits the third, which means the game stayed under, which means Auburn covered. And obviously it means Virginia survives in advance to the national title game. When it comes to controversy, I don't think there's any question. Samir Daugherty fouled the guy. Maybe shouldn't have transferred from VCU, but he did, and he fouled the guy, and lo and behold, they called it. And you could say he fouled him on the shot and on the landing. I don't argue with the call, although the refs swallowed their whistles for extended stretches in the second half of that ball game. It was not a foul fest by any stretch of the imagination, and that kind of a touchy foul, but one the ref has to call. The one that they didn't call, obviously, the double dribble, or was it a foul right before the double dribble because Bryce Brown grabbed Ty Jerome on that second? I don't think any of this was as egregious as what we saw, for example, in the NFC Championship game, where now the rules are being changed because it was a pass interference that should have been called and wasn't. Nonetheless, a little bit of controversy? No, it's a lot of controversy. That's the way that it is, circa 2019. Kudos to the Cavs. They didn't cash my ticket or your ticket, Donnie. They didn't cash anybody's ticket unless you had them on the money line, and they might cash a ticket tonight to win the national title.
Yeah, a lot of was forgotten in that game, Teddy, because it was a 57-47 lead with just around 5 minutes to go in the game, and a 14-0 Auburn run sort of gets lost because, we concentrate so much on the late free throws, which I can't imagine the pressure of a young kid in a dome atmosphere needing to make all 3 free throws to get to Monday night's basketball game for the national championship game. But, 61-57, this game was over. And let's not forget, Teddy, Kyle Guy drops a 3 with under 10 seconds to go just to make it a 1-point game. This kid down the stretch, 6 points, Teddy, in the last 9 seconds.
And the one missed free throw from Auburn, who'd been great at the line all day, but the one that mattered I wouldn't have sealed the deal, but it prevented them from losing by a point. Well, that's the one that came up just short. And look, I don't know how Virginia's done it. They have absolutely been playing with fire, and they've come out all smiles. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we preview tonight's game later, right here on That Betting Show.
Yeah, Teddy, Gardner-Webb had them down. So, you're right about it. Virginia seemingly having 9 lives. We'll take a look at it. Texas Tech, however, closed out Michigan State in the late-night recap. In the earlier game, Teddy stayed under the total. This one also stayed under the total, but more impressively, Texas Tech holding Michigan State to 51 total points on less than 32% shooting. This team can D up, Teddy.
They sure can. Cassius Winston out of his game throughout in that contest. And Texas Tech, although they survived a Michigan State run, the Spartans cut the lead to 2? And then Texas Tech was able to pull away. Concerns tonight, however, when we talk about Tariq Owen, he went down with an ankle injury on Saturday. In less than 10 minutes, and it looked ugly. In less than 10 minutes of basketball time after limping onto the locker room, he was back on the floor, stretching. He was in the game, but played only a few minutes and then sat the rest of the game. Said that his ankle was retaped, that the trainers were trying to find a larger shoe to accommodate the new tape job. But Owens back on the bench by the end of the game. We'll have to see if he's 100% tonight. All that being said, Texas Tech again down the stretch, making the plays on both ends of the court. They've been doing that consistently in this tournament, a lot more consistently than Virginia has.
Yeah, same feel, Teddy, for that first Virginia game where had Virginia get out to that lead and Auburn came all the way back. It looked like the same thing was going to happen because Texas Tech had that 13-point lead, goes down all the way to 1, and then a big bucket, I believe, by Culver to make it 3 points, and they were able to escape and get away. The one interesting thing about tonight, Teddy, because you don't want to look too much in the, guessing in the injury information, but the one thing that we know from sports and we know from injuries out, you can come back on a little bit of an adrenaline kick in that game because it looks like it was a bad ankle injury and a bad knee injury on top of it. Runs out, got a tape, feeling good, plays only a few moments sparingly, and then the next day comes. You have the swelling getting back up, the achiness. Looking into tonight's game, which we're going to preview a little bit later, but before we get into that, do you think he's going to be okay for this game, though? Because, I mean, this is a 6'10 player that they need him on the boards against a pretty sizable Virginia squad.
They sure do. I mean, Tariq Owens is one guy that not only does he have to play, he'll have to play well if Texas Tech is going to win this ballgame. He's officially listed as probable right now with an ankle injury. There's nothing being talked about his knee, and they do expect him to play. The question, of course, how effective he's going to be. And to be honest, you know how it is in 2019. They'll jack him up with something. I would think he'll be okay going into tonight's game. But whether he's able to, whether he tweaks the ankle, whether something happens within the contest to diminish his effectiveness, Tariq Owens isn't 100% or close to it in the second half of this ballgame, Texas Tech may well be in trouble.
Teddy, after 10 games in the American League, we're going to talk a little bit of baseball now. Some of the stuff that we went over, if you watched all through, and I don't know why you weren't watching all through that betting show, we did a preview of each and every Major League Baseball team. And look, we thought the Rays would be a decent squad. The Tigers, not so much. The Mariners, not so much. They get the early start, Teddy, out there in Tokyo and are riding the wave, picking up their 9th win yesterday. The AL 3 leaders right now, Teddy. The Rays, the Tigers, and the Mariners. Shake up April, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, if ever there is clear evidence to illustrate this is a marathon, not a sprint, it's the standings after 10 games of the season. No, the Tigers are not going to win the AL Central this year. No, the Mariners are not going to win the AL West this year. And no, the Rays probably aren't going to win the AL East this year. But in a short sample size, all three of those teams doing very well. Tampa's been really impressive so far. Their pitching has been dynamite, starters and bullpen. I've been really impressed with the Rays. I'm with you in terms of the concept of, this is not a mirage. From Tampa, for the Tigers, nice to play the Royals. For the Mariners, they played more than their fair share. And they're hitting the ball right now. But do we trust any of these teams to take care of business? No, not a one of them will be in first place by the All-Star break. Not a one of them will be in first place by Memorial Day. Not a one of them will be in first place by May 1st. This is just a little blip on a long MLB season.
Yeah, how long can it be sustainable there when you're looking at the Rays, Teddy, through 10 games, only giving up 19 total runs? You're going to win some games early if you're going to do that. Let's see how long they can continue that for. Overnight line movers, we're talking about a team with the Rays, Teddy, only giving up 19 runs. Well, we're going to get about half of those possibly tonight in Oakland and Baltimore. Line opens up at 9, Teddy, goes right up to 10. This isn't Coors Field. This is Camden Yards here. A's and Orioles plus 123 for the Orioles. Total of 10. Estrada and Cashner on the mound tonight.
Yeah, it's supposed to be hot and humid. It's also the wind's supposed to be blowing in. So you don't often see games where the total's moving like this without the wind blowing out or something like that. But nobody trusts Baltimore's pitching right now. The O's just allowed 29 runs in a 3-game set against the Yankees, giving up 14 dingers in that ball game. The bullpen wasn't any good, isn't any good, and has been atrocious. Nobody trusts the starting pitching. A's are hitting. I can understand why this total has been bet up in early betting action today. Baltimore flying over the total all weekend long.
Teddy, Michaelis and the Cards getting a little bit of action today. And also, we're going to flip this over in just a few moments here to the Rockies as well. Now, we had an interesting thing last night on Sunday Night Baseball. Obviously, Teddy, who played last night? Colorado Rockies, Los Angeles Dodgers. We're seeing both a microcosm here in both of these games that are setting up the same way. Because in the first one we'll talk about, as I said, Michaelis and the Cards getting the early number. Chris offshore, Teddy, opens up at minus 130. Now we're seeing it down to minus 113. So we see the Cards plus 101 as dogs, total of 8.5. Ryu and Michaelis tonight.
Yeah, the markets don't like the fact the Dodgers played a late game last night and had to travel east and now play an earlier game today. And the markets definitely are interested in a little Michaelis right now. 2 mediocre starts to open the season. No question. Did the exact same thing last year. He had 2 mediocre starts to open the season, and then he was pretty dominant. The Cards went 7-1 in his next 8. He threw 6 gems during that span. So a little bit of love for St. Louis here. They got off the schneid with a nice win over the Padres yesterday to snap what had been an ugly skid to open up that series.
Yep, segue right into it, Teddy. Late night finish for the Rockies has this line falling. Offshore markets opened as high as 145. Now we're seeing it down to about 124. The Rockies are staying home, so no travel involved in this one. But how about this? Coors Light, welcome back, baby. 11 as the over-under in this game. Tehran versus Freeland today, Teddy.
Yeah, and I mean the Rockies are just 1-7 since their 2-0 start, and the 2-0 start came in Miami against the Marlins. They just got swept at home on their opening homestand. The bullpen looks pretty shot tonight after allowing 29 runs in 3 games against the Dodgers. And Atlanta's the better of these two teams. I'm not surprised at all that we've seen Braves money. In fact, I'm surprised we haven't seen more. This line it was a head scratcher at the beginning. I understand the markets don't love Tehran, and Freeland's a guy who has some love from the markets. He keeps the ball down. But when you look at these two teams, there's no comparison. Atlanta's a better squad. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, I say, they've taken a lot of money, and I wouldn't be surprised they take more money between now and the opening pitch.
Yep, nice little Major League Baseball slate tonight, Ted. You can get those off, a couple earlier games in action, and yet here we go. Watch what you bet on that betting show today. Title time in Minneapolis. Somebody will be crowned champion, Teddy. Will it be the first of 4, 6, or 8 points in this one, just like you played in your backyard? Texas Tech versus Virginia. Virginia currently holding, Teddy, -1.5. Total of 118, some 117.5s also out there. Moneyline split +107, -127. Going to tee it up tonight, 9:20 Eastern time on CBS Live from US Bank Stadium. Texas Tech, Teddy, 20-15 against the number in all line games, 5-3 against the spread as an underdog, but 7-3 on neutral courts. When we flip that over, Virginia has been very good to their backers, albeit not in the Final Four matchup, but 25-12 against the number in the season, 23-12, Teddy, as a favorite, but only 5-5 against the number in these neutral court games.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk total first, obviously, because we're talking about a historical total, 117.5, the current betting numbers. If you'd looked at every national title game since 1950, and you're betting 120 as the number, well, 3 of them have stayed under. So obviously this total way out of line with what we've seen historically. However, we're talking about two teams that could well be considered the 2 best defensive teams in the country. You can use whatever metrics you want. There are going to be no fast break points this evening. There are going to be no easy looks in the paint, and it's going to come down to which team is capable of making shots against a tough defense. 117.5, I can't bet that under. There's too much room for scramble points at the end. And even though this is the type of game where first to 50 could well win it, at 117.5, man, that is low. And we'll have to see how the game is called. If they're calling fouls, this game could well fly over the total. If they're not, it may sneak over late. I'm not going to get involved in an under, despite the 2 defenses at 117.5. It's over or pass for this better. When it comes to the side in this ball game, look, you can make a heck of a case for either one of these two teams. You really can. But when you look, and when we look at what Texas Tech has done, let's say in their losses this season, the losses have been pretty comparable. I went back and looked at every loss they had. When they're losing, they're turning the ball over. Jarrett Culver, 30 turnovers in their 6 losses this season. That's been the flaw. It's an offensive flaw for Texas Tech when they go down. Against Virginia's defense, you don't know that Red Raiders offense is going to be clicking, especially Tariq Owens isn't at 100%. But as you mentioned, when you talked about this Virginia team, not just this year in the Big Dance, they haven't been covering numbers. They didn't cover last year, obviously. You can go back throughout the entire Bennett era, and we haven't seen Virginia play their best ball in March and now in April. They flat out haven't. I'm still waiting for Virginia's A game in this tournament. We saw them sneak by the other night. We have not seen Virginia step on anybody. The Cavs are the class here. I truly believe that. But Texas Tech with what, again, Buffalo, Michigan, Gonzaga, Michigan State. That's 4 Final Four teams or caliber teams that they've beaten. You look at Virginia, never were able to put Oklahoma away, never able to put Oregon away, had incredible defense down the stretch. Obviously never put Purdue away, let it all get away against Auburn down the stretch. I think that the Texas Tech has played a tougher slate getting here. I think they're playing better ball than anyone in the country right now. I'd be hard-pressed to bet against the Red Raiders tonight, even though, from a value perspective, there's none on the Texas Tech side. Pure point spread, pure power rating-wise, Virginia probably should be 2.5 here, not the 1.5 that we're seeing around Las Vegas this morning.
Yeah, Ted, it got to be an excruciating total. Like, I know we see the 117 up there, and when you're looking, even if you say, look, the pace is probably going to be there, the defense will be there, maybe they come out shooting cold. We're talking about a game that's like 30-28 to half, where most people are like, boy, what a really low-scoring game. And you're right in there and probably the angle to cover. Talk about just from a quick perspective here, where everything seems like it has to line up perfectly, Teddy, to hit this under, when if you're just free rolling on an over saying, hey, I think they can both get in the 50s, and we'll see what happens. But if one of these teams does get hot, which we know they have kids that can shoot flames from three-pointers. You're talking about a first half where these teams shoot, each 5 of 10 from three, and you got a game on your hands that should be able to go over the total.
If you get 10 made three-pointers in the first half, this game's not staying under. If you get a 30-28 halftime score, this game's not staying under. But just as equally, we could be looking at an 18-14 halftime score. Elite defensive squads. And, we think about the game that stands out to me, UConn Butler. I mean, the ugliest national championship game I've ever seen, where it was just brick after brick after brick after brick. We might see some of that tonight. We are talking elite defenses, but someone's shooting. I mean, the one thing, which team has more offensive weapons? Virginia probably has more, even though they haven't come to play consistently here in the tournament. If Tolliver doesn't have a good game for Texas Tech, they're not winning. If Kyle Guy doesn't have a good game for Virginia, they got a chance. And that, in my mind, one concern certainly about the Texas Tech side of the equation, because Virginia's been pretty good at shutting down their opposing team's leading scorer, both here in the tournament and throughout the course of the regular season. But total-wise, again, I can't get involved in an under in this range. But once the game starts, in-game betting, you better believe, pay attention to whether the refs are swallowing their whistles or if they're calling everything. If it's a foul fest, this game ain't going under. If they're swallowing their whistles, you're not going to catch me with an over ticket. That's one for post-tip-off, not pre-tip-off, in my opinion.
College basketball is going to start off at 9:20 tonight, Teddy. We got a nice little doubleheader here in Major League Baseball that should be finished up by the time we're getting ready to tip it off in Minneapolis. Big ticket teams on display Monday night in Major League Baseball. Yankees and the Astros. Astros, Teddy, currently favored by 150, total of 7.5. Should be a good one from down at Minute Maid Park. Yankees are 5-4 in the season, Teddy. The Astros are 5-5. But how about this? Yankees 3-0 on the road. Astros 3-0 at home. What gives tonight?
And the Yankees, of course, are doing it without Giancarlo Stanton and Miguel Andujar and Aaron Hicks. What's that, 92 home runs last year, sitting on the sidelines in street clothes right now for the Yankees. Didn't matter over the weekend against Baltimore. Didn't even close to come mattering over the weekend. They obviously bombed the Orioles in that ballgame. 15 runs. Again, yesterday they hit 14 home runs in the series, 29 runs scored overall. It's an offense that's clicking even without many of their key pieces. Justin Verlander, only lasted 4 innings in his previous outing. Doesn't necessarily have a great track record against the Yankees, though he dominated them in a pair of starts last year, which is something that Tanaka has not done against the Astros. He's 0-2 with an 8.87 ERA and 5 career starts against Houston. Had a rough time on his last trip down to Minute Maid. First gut in this ballgame, you're like, wow, the Yankees. This is an attractive price to get the Yankees and underdogs, but with their lineup all banged up, with Tanaka's track record against the Astros, and with Houston getting off the schneid with that weekend sweep, my initial lean towards the Yankees, well, it dissipated rather quickly. Not a game that I'm laying with Houston, but I don't want the dog in this one.
Phillies and Nationals, Teddy, flip cities in the second series, as we saw last week, split in Washington, now coming back to Philadelphia. Might we have some interesting bat flips in this series that we did get in the previous one? Phillies and Nationals are going to get it going tonight. Phillies favored minus 136, total of 9.5, 7:05 p.m. on ESPN Plus, live from Citizens Bank Ballpark. Sanchez 0-0 on the season, but with a 9 ERA. Velasquez actually got in a half inning of work, being the Phillies' 5th starter, so he shows no starts with the 0 ERA. Young kid, live arm, sometimes gets himself in trouble. Should be a decent one out there at Citizens Bank in Philadelphia tonight, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, the quotes from Gabe Kapler about Velasquez, quote, he had some really good side sessions recently, and he's worked really hard with pitching coach Kurt Young. Young has put in a lot of work with him. I feel he's going to come out confidently. That's a good sign, obviously, but we're not talking about an ace-level hurler here. We are talking about a Phillies pen that has shown some vulnerability. They pitched very well yesterday against Minnesota and able to escape out of that series with a 2-1 series victory. Same story with the Nats. They took 2 out of 3 from the Mets, but that Washington bullpen did not pitch very effectively yesterday. Obviously, a 12-run lead turned into a 12-9 stress fest. And, they had to bring in Sean Doolittle, the closer, in a game where they led 12-1 in the 7th inning, which means that bullpen is not fresh tonight against a Phillies team that obviously can hit the baseball. They didn't hit yesterday. They didn't hit on Saturday. Back-to-back low-scoring games for the Phillies, but obviously we saw Bryce Harper having a little bit of success against Nationals pitching last time out, 5 for 7 with 3 walks, 2 runs and 3 RBIs in a 2-game set against Washington earlier in D.C. No surprise here if Harper has some success again today in a game that certainly has potential to be yet another slugfest. 2 pretty good offenses, 2 pitchers I do not trust, and 2 bullpens I definitely do not trust on Monday night.
Yeah, Barrios was pretty good against the Phillies yesterday. So we got 2 baseball games, Teddy. Nice little, maybe that little college basketball game taking place. Let's flip it off the mic because a new season, or I should say seasons, Teddy, is about to strike up here. NHL and NBA playoffs about to get underway. Both this week. I believe the NBA starts up on Saturday. NHL is a little bit sooner. The 2-month grind, Teddy. In the NFL, we watch the postseason, right? It goes from like January and the first week of February, we have a Super Bowl. These 2 sports grinded out, Teddy, for almost 2 full months apiece. Betting strategy coming into play. Obviously, there's going to be no more college basketball. These teams will take center stage. Let's talk a little bit about, Teddy, that grind of going over 2 months and the day-to-day and the reading the tea leaves and playing in this city, moving to a next city, and the rivalries that stem from this, especially in NHL hockey as well.
Sure. I mean, the one thing that I would say, if I'm going to give you one piece of advice for playoff betting, whether it's NHL or NBA, and we're talking about the grinded out sports, the 7-game series of sports, and not like baseball where you're playing every day, but rest in between every game. But this is my number one piece of advice, is that when a team is done, they're done. Sometimes a team take a 2-1 series lead, but you know what? They used everything they had to get there, and the other team's the superior squad. I love those type of situations. They tend to be really profitable. But be aware, when teams are done, they're done. They've won their last game. They've covered their last point spread. You'll see that a lot as these series progress. Not in game 1, not in game 2, game 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6. You see the dead teams, the done teams go bye-bye. That's the way to make money. In terms of a 2-month grind, it is what it is. I mean, as the games come up, you analyze them, and then you do your best to find winners. And especially at this time of the year, for God's sakes, get every last half point you can, every last bit of value you can with your underdogs or your favorites. Best way to do that, check out the live odds screen at sportsbookreview.com, SBRodds.com, I should say. The best way to look at that. That'll get you the information that we all have here in Vegas. Know where to make your bet, know when to make your bet. That's every bit as important as handicapping strategies when it comes to beating these postseasons.
Teddy with the professional drop there, people, on SBRodds.com. No doubt you want to check that out. For that betting show, we're going to grind on, as we always do, for April 8th, 2019, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. Championship game tonight. Me and Teddy will go over the fallout tomorrow. Do we get any controversial calls, any point spread close ones? Hopefully we do, so we can talk about it. Thank you for tuning in once again. He's Teddy Savransky. Give him a follow on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. I'm Donnie Seymour at RightSideVP, and we'll be back tomorrow. Good luck on your tickets tonight.